Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of The World Today. I'm Ahmed Nader, and as usual we will be discussing the latest headlines and the articles published in several newspapers and magazines from Egypt and the world. And today I'm honored to be having with me in the studio Miss Ayat Tawy, the senior journalist at Al Ahram Online. Thank you very much for being with us
my
today
pleasure.
on The World Today. And we will be starting straight away with the main headline from Egypt today, as Prime Minister Sharif Ismail in the Red Sea Governorate of Ras Gharib to check the damage for the rain floods. And the article says, Prime Minister Sharif Ismail visited Ras Gharib town to check the damages one day after severe rain led to floods that left at least 15 killed and 47 injured nationwide. The Prime Minister was accompanied by the Ministers of Local and Administrative Development, as well as the Transportation and the Red Sea Governor. Ismail took a tour of the places affected by the flood in Ras Gharib, around 150 kilometers north of Hurghada, and listened to explanations by the Governor on how the affected areas would be rebuilt and what relief efforts are being accorded to the victims. Ms. Ayat, how do you see, first of all, the reaction of the government, the reaction of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi towards the developments in several governorates across Egypt, and more specifically, the Red Sea Governorate?
Well, first of all, it's good. It's a very good move that the Prime Minister has paid a visit to the town,
Yes.
since it is one of the worst affected places. The president said that, or issued directives to allocate $50 million in compensation, and another $50 million for the urgent restoration of areas most affected, which is a good move, yeah. But the problem here is that this is actually this what actually happens every year. The same sequence of severe damage, compensation. Directives to try to tackle what.
So it's not a surprise for the government or the people?
It's not a surprise for the government to do that, and even the floods and the heavy rains and the tough weather conditions were not a surprise as well. So we have a problem here, which is, let me say, a poor crisis management by the government, because as I told you, the floods came as no surprise. Around this time of the year, around this time every year.
It should have been anticipated by the government.
It should have been anticipated, and actually meteorologists always warn about that around this time of the year.
Yes.
And they had already warned this time. And the problem is, as I told you, that the government should have anticipated that. The government should have taken precautionary measures, since it is no surprise every year. It's been happening for so many years, even since the huge floods in the late 90s.
Yes.
And since then, every year you have the same weather conditions, but the difference is that it's in different areas. Like last year, it was in Alexandria and Bahira, and we saw the same scenes, like cars swept off roads. 2,000 people were killed.
It's kind of the same scenario.
Yeah, kind of the same scenario.
Different governorate.
Millions of pounds in losses when large or entire sprawl of farmland sank.
Yes.
Thousands of poultry heads died. So more or less, we had the same magnitude or the same amount of losses last year. The difference is that it was in Bahira and Alexandria, and this year you have it in Asyut, Sohag, and Ras Gharib. But the floods, the severe rains, the tough weather conditions are no surprise. And that's why the government should have been more prepared and should have taken precautionary measures to try to minimize the impacts of the floods or the bad weather conditions in flood-prone areas. Especially that the Red Sea is known to be one of those.
Yes, and speaking about the government, do you think that there would be new measures, new or additional measures that should be taken or would be taken by the current government in the coming months, especially that we are approaching winter as well and more floods perhaps?
The Prime Minister Sharif Ismail said that 3 dams will be built in Ras Gharib and that they should be completed before the start of winter. So we hope to see that materialize. And about the compensation part. Any more steps? I can't see anything on the horizon. There is nothing clear about what the government, any shift of policies or anything. There are lots of things that should be done, lots of measures that should be taken. But I'm not really sure. So far, they have not announced a clear plan or a clear shift of policy or a certain strategy to try to minimize the impact of heavy rains or floods in the future.
Do you think that Egypt is being successful in dealing with such crises as other countries are doing?
I don't think so. I don't think so because, as I told you at first, there is a problem and in the country's crisis management. Since something has been happening for so many years, so you've got to deal differently every year. There has got to be some sort of improvement in your performance, in the precautions that you're taking, in the measures that you're putting in the ground. But if you have the same amount of damage every year, if you have the same number of deaths every year, so we're facing a problem here. As I told you, there are so many things that the government can do.
Yes.
First of all, and not everything may cost a lot of money or huge amount of money, according to experts. First of all, the rainwater, that the government should make use of rainwater. Excess water you should create a system for excess water to drain into the Nile or into small water. This is the first step to avoid severe damage.
Yes.
You've got to drain excess water, to drain the runoff into either a river or a canal.
Yes.
You've got to improve the country's poor sewage and drainage systems because this is one of the major problems. You've got poor infrastructure that is significantly affecting the situation. You've got to create sustainable drainage system, and that could be done. It could be done in so many ways, either starting from small residential dry well all the way to large municipal systems. So as I told you, there are so many things that can be done.
Yes, as I said before, President Sisi also allocated about 100,000 pounds for the floods victims.
Yeah.
We have seen President Sisi attending the first youth conference in Sharm el-Sheikh in the past 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
So we know that President Sisi is trying to do something regarding the floods. What about the youth that we have been speaking about, we have been speaking to in the past 4 or 5 days?
Yeah.
What is the role of the youth of the governorates, of the Red Sea governorate, maybe Sohag governorate, maybe, to be participating in solving such a problem or a crisis?
Well, I don't think that the youth should play a big role in
maybe under the government, under the supervision of the government.
You're actually suffering from incompetence throughout all municipalities.
Yes.
So, and I don't think that there is a big contribution or a big representation of youth in local councils. Accordingly, there wouldn't be an official role they can play. They play unofficial role, as you've already seen over the past few days, like trying to like clean the street, trying to
voluntary work.
Yeah, but official work under the government, I don't think that they are allowed the opportunity to do so at the time being. I think it's basically the responsibility of the government.
Yes, and speaking of youth as well, we do know that today the presidency began forming the committees responsible for carrying out the recommendations that were made during President Assisi's meetings with the youth during the first national conference in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Yeah.
How do you see the importance of such a step or such a meeting, first of all?
To form the new committees. It is a very good move by the president and the presidency. But I hope that we see that put into action. Like the problem in our country is that we have committees, we have laws, and the problem is always how to put that into effect, how to put that into action. It is a very good step, especially talking about the two main subjects tackled, which are amending the protest law and reviewing the cases of political detainees. The president promised to look at and review the cases of those detained over political reasons or for political reasons or over political charges. And I think that this is a very important step because, as you know, many young people have been detained for years over violence-related charges and terrorism-related charges.
Yes.
The president said that he's going to look at that, and the parliament also said that Ayat, the head of the parliament's Human Rights Committee, said yesterday that he believes that all political detainees can be released in accordance with the president's initiative. But he said that those detained over violence-related charges or who are accused of sabotage and that sort of accusations cannot be freed or cannot be pardoned. The problem here is that, as you may know, many people have been detained for more than 2 or 3 years over violence-related charges. Some of them already may have committed acts of violence. Some did not. Some have been accused of belonging to terrorist organizations, while in fact they may not have any political affiliation.
Yes.
Some were arrested and detained for again carrying out violent acts while they were peacefully protesting. So the problem here is that you've got to study you cannot like detain a person for more than 2 years or 3 years without conviction.
Which is against the Constitution.
The Constitution, the maximum pre-trial detention is 2 years, but a lot of people, a lot of young people have been detained for more than 2 years, and they have exceeded the maximum 2-year period of pre-trial detention.
Yes, we'll also try to speak more about the Egyptians winning a seat on the UN Human Rights Council, and we will be reading that from Al-Ahram Online, which says that Egypt wins the seat on the United Nations Human Rights Council. A foreign ministry statement read that Egypt has been elected with a majority vote for the 3-year stint on the United Nations Human Rights Council, the UNHRC. The Egyptian term on the 47-member human rights body will begin 2017 and conclude in 2020. In a secret ballot in the United Nations General Assembly, Egypt received 173 votes. Ayat, how do you think it is important for Egypt to be winning such a seat?
I think it would greatly help the country tackle human rights violations taking place in war-torn countries like Syria and Iraq. It will also be a good opportunity for that membership to boost the country's compliance to international human rights laws, because basically that's what the body does.
Yes.
Like boosting countries' capabilities of applying or upholding international rights laws.
Yes, Ms. Ayat Tawy, the senior journalist at Al Ahram Online. Thank you very much for being with us
Thank you for
today
having me.
on The
Thank
World
you so
Today.
much.
And this brings us to the end of The World Today for Sunday. Thank you for watching and goodbye.